Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my weekly deck reviews. If you are new to my channel or new to this series, once a week I get up a video where I do talk about the decks that I've been working with over the past week. Usually one tarot and one oracle, though I do change up that structure from time to time. So without further ado, I'm gonna get right into it and talk about what I have been working with. So I decided as I was moving into February that I wanted to work with Tarot de Marseille. So as the first proper Marseille, I say with lots of air quotes, proper Marseille deck, is actually the Marseille Cat Tarot, which I realize some of you will probably roll your eyes at, but this has been the cutest, funnest deck to work with. I have used the absolute crap out of this deck this week, partly because I also this week read in its entirety, well, between this week and last week, I read the Untold Tarot by Caitlin Matthews. Caitlin Matthews is brilliant, in case you didn't know. I think she also has a book on the Lenormand that now I'm kind of curious about, because you guys, when I say that I have many, these little file tab bookmarks are things that I put into books when I want to be able to permanently reference things easily. I read the crap out of this book too, and there was a lot in here about directional reading. There was a lot in here about numerology. Oh, I've got my Catland Oracle. Oh no, this isn't. This is the moon card from the 78 Tarot Elemental bookmark, but this artwork is by Joanna Nelson. And these cats are like the cats in her Catland Oracle, which has to come home with me someday because I just need the whole collection. That needs to happen at some point. But anyway, sidetracking myself. I read this entire thing and I have referenced it again and again and again. Like it basically lays flat now because I have so worn in the binding. I don't even know where to start with this, but I'll talk about this more in a minute because I just realized I should be talking about the deck because that's what I said I was gonna do. So this is what the backs look like. They are fully reversible, as you can see. It is a thin cardstock. Like mine had a bow almost immediately, so I've also been practicing a new shuffling technique that I've been wanting to learn with this deck because it's so thin and bendy that it's really good for, like, well, practicing bridge shuffling or any kind of shuffling you want to do, but I'm trying to learn a corner shuffle method, and this has been really good for that. I have to show you these cards. I really need to film a flip through of this. It is on my list of things I want to do, but look at how freaking cute this is. Like, there's just these little cats throughout. All the directional stuff is correct in this deck. So when it referenced in the book, you know, this character looks left or this character looks right, it all matched what was happening in this deck. I just really, really enjoyed working with this so much. I will say, in a way, it became a bit of a handicap because there are little nods to what I think of as RWS meanings that show up, which is actually something I thought would help me, but because I was trying to learn the Tarot de Marseille system, sometimes I found that distracting because it would sort of keep pulling me back to RWS when I was trying to kind of look at things in a more, I guess, neutral kind of way. So sometimes actually I would say that those were less helpful than I thought they would be. So note, if you are thinking about learning Marseille, I actually might recommend not, I said the opposite before, but I might recommend, unless you want to read it RWS style, I would recommend maybe not picking up a Marseille right away that has that sort of fusion of meanings. That said, one thing I love about this deck is I feel like I could reach for it for any type of reading, and I could always lean into RWS meanings if I forget my numerological association, or if I get stumped, I can always lean back into RWS. So I think you just kind of need to know what's going to be important to you, what you're going to want to do when you work with these cards. But I have to show you the Death card because I don't think I had noticed it when I first looked at this deck, and the first time I stumbled on it, I was utterly charmed. And yes, I was charmed by the Death card. Let me show you why. Come on, where are you? There you are. Check out Death in this deck. He is playing with the kitty cat. I literally about died when I saw this the first time. That is the cutest dang Death card I've ever seen in my life. Like, if you have a client who you think might be nervous about the tarot and is afraid of cards like this, is that ever like a reassuring Death card? I just can't. It's so good. I've really enjoyed working with this deck. I'm so glad I picked it up. If you don't know, I picked this up as part of my Say Yes to the Deck episode 1. I'm currently working on episode 2, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Shuffles like a dream, comes in a little tuck box. Nothing to write home about cardstock wise, but it held up fine and I beat it up. This is one of those decks though that is going to show, it's going to get a little shaped to your shuffling habits pretty much right away, I would say. But I really, really loved working with it. I wouldn't say I found the little white book that came with this deck particularly helpful, but I was working with it with this book and it was perfect for that, so I really enjoyed working with it. Now I can talk more about the book. Okay, so some things I mentioned last week. I think I read the poem that's in the pips, but there's some other really cool things in here. So I'll just read you the bookmarks, which should give you an idea of what stood out to me. So I have a bookmark for the majors, and the majors have like sort of an overview of the major on this side, and it talks about which direction it faces. There's like a quote, there's some keywords, and also for the majors, it talks about the major as a person, and then has some examples of how you might read with this card. And then on the opposing page, you usually get more history around that card as far as older decks, Marseille decks, historical decks. And then there was always a section that talked about how to read the directional elements of the card. So for example, the Fool shows you what you are not taking seriously, which will be the card he faces. And so on every single page for the majors, I highlighted that section that talked about the directional. So for the Emperor, in a reading, the Emperor will show what he is promoting in the card facing him. Behind him, there may be matters that need his authoritative care. This is the element that I found the coolest about working with Marseille, was looking at that sort of directional stuff, looking at each card as like, okay, which way is he heading and what is that telling me? And how does this card pair with that card? And it added a whole new dimension to reading that made reading with the Marseille this past week absolutely delightful. And this was something I didn't really get to dive into until I worked with the Cat Marseille, because the deck I worked with the previous week was the Alchemical Tarot Magnum Opus, the distilled down one by Robert M. Place, and that one did not have traditional facing and things like that, so I couldn't really work with that element. But with this one I could, and it was so much fun to do that. On the front facing cards you can pull a card above and below to get more information. There's a lot of those kinds of techniques in this book, and I referenced it so much when I would lay out cards. I also found for the Tarot de Marseille that I found myself reading rarely just a single card. I hope by the time I'm done working with Marseille over the next however many weeks that I will be more comfortable with single card draws, but I do enjoy reading it more in groups, and I find myself sort of automatically gravitating towards reading almost in a Lenormand style, where I'm pairing the meaning of this card plus this card equals this meaning, which is interesting and not something I've done with tarot. So it's been really interesting to play with different ways to read. And I could apparently geek out on this with you guys for a while, but I'm really kind of loving it. And I wasn't sure I was going to, but it's for sure taking me in a slightly different direction with my tarot practice, and I'm all about it. So the Oracle deck that I have been working with, just want to make sure I don't lose my place of what I'm going to talk about. The Oracle deck I've been working with this week, last couple weeks actually, is Kim Cran's Wild Unknown Archetypes deck. I am head over heels in love with this Oracle deck. I'm going to call it an Oracle deck. It's kind of the way I'm using it. The artwork is divine. The archetypes are rich and full of meaning. I love the artwork. I love sitting with the energy of these cards. There is a section for every card in the guidebook called Going Deeper. Go Deeper. And it will reference a poem or a book or something. And like, for example, I pulled the Underworld card, which is one of the darkest cards I think in the deck. I pulled that yesterday or today, and the Go Deeper was to look up a map of Dante's Inferno and kind of reflect on that. And I've been doing those Go Deeper exercises when I can. At the very least, one of the things recommended in the guidebook of this deck, sorry, I should show cards while I'm babbling at you. One of the exercises recommended was to look at the title of the card, so like the King, and then image search that term or that term followed by the word myth, and just kind of see what bubbles up. I've done things like change my desktop wallpaper to sort of line up with that theme. I've done a lot of deep work with these cards. I also have done a shadow work deep dive reading that was thanks to Danny of Danny Mystic. I'm going to link her video up in the cards. she did a very in-depth shadow work reading, and she used this deck as like the jumping off point for that reading. I did the same and I loved it. It was a powerful, potent, juicy reading, and I'm gonna recommend you go watch that video like as soon as you're done watching my video, because it was really good and it gave me so much to chew on, and it just helped me to fall in love with this deck even more. But I am a huge Archetypes nerd to begin with. I think that's one of the things that drew me to the tarot. It's one of the things I love working with about the tarot, and this has been such a treasure. And originally I had actually planned to work with this deck for the entire time I was working with Marseille, or at least for a month or so. And as I worked with it over the last couple weeks, I realized that this was kind of taking center stage, and I do want to focus a bit more on reading my Marseille. And the other thing is that I felt like I wanted to sit with these archetypes longer than I have been with daily pulls. So I've decided instead that I'm going to rotate this deck into my spiritual practice. Now, I have a few things I do spiritually. I will, if I remember, link my spiritual tarot decks video. It's a bit out of date and my practice has shifted since then, but it'll give you kind of an idea of what I do. I have decks I work with at every full moon, decks I work with at every new moon, and what I do always have in my rotation for spiritual work is I always have a deck. I'm looking up at my tarot deck altar, but I always have a deck on rotation that I work with for many, many months usually for shadow work. And I have been working for quite a while with the Heal Yourself reading cards by Ina Segal. This is a Rockpool Publishing deck. This artwork is not usually what I gravitate towards. It's body beautiful. You know what, there's several decks I have that kind of have this body beautiful aesthetic, and it's fine. It's just not like what excites me. What does excite me about this deck are, look at the beautiful backs too, holy cow. What does excite me about this deck are the themes. They're wonderful for shadow work. The guidebook usually gives you a bit of an exercise. So there's a meaning for the card and then there's an action. And these feel very shadow work themed. Like they ask you to kind of question yourself and question your behavior and question the way that you maybe communicate or what you're focusing on. And I found that really, really helpful. So I really enjoyed working with these, but I think it's time for me to put these away for now. And I'm going to be moving in the Archetypes as my primary shadow work deck, because working with, and I've pretty much read this entire guidebook by now, but every single card offers so much to chew on, and it talks about it with shadow, when it's dark, when it's light. It encourages you to really sit with the energy. And not all the messages I get from this deck are shadowy, but I feel like there's a little shadow to dig into with every card if I want to do that. And I just really feel like this would make it a wonderful shadow work companion. So this is going to be moving over here to my decks that I pull every full moon, is when I now pull my shadow work card. I used to pull it on the dark moon and that was so much heaviness that I've switched my shadow work pull to the full moon, and I do my dark goddess pull on the new moon. So there's a little update to my spiritual deck practice. But yeah, I will be rotating this one out for now. It is still one I enjoy, and it's still one that I happily recommend, but I don't recommend it just for the artwork. I definitely recommend it for the guidebook and the messages, and yeah, so there. The reading cloth I've been playing with for a while now. This poor thing's been folded and refolded so many times I need to iron it, but look at this side. Here's the problem. This is a super adorable side, and I actually whined for this cloth from Peggy when she picked up this fabric, because I was thinking of the Tarot Fauna. If you know the Tarot Fauna, I really want to work with this cloth with that deck. But I also couldn't wait to work with it, so I tried to work with it with my other decks, and I just kept covering up the poor fox's face with my cards, and it just made me sad. So I kept flipping it over to this side and using this side. But this side's really pretty too. I really enjoyed working with this. Every time I flipped it over to the fox side, I literally had one of those moments. So this is really cool. But I am going to rotate it out because it also got distracting over time. I'm going to rotate it back in when I work with Tarot Fauna next. The tarot deck I'm going to be working with this upcoming week is the Tarot de Maria Celia. This was the first Marseille deck I really, really, really wanted because I liked the artwork. I had picked up, my very first Marseille deck I picked up was actually the Wandering Oracles, what's that called? The Marshmallow Marseille. I thought that was going to be right up my alley. They were smaller cards, they had gorgeous holographic backs. I loved them in theory, but there was something about that artwork that I didn't love. And I think the biggest thing I did love was that the painting went outside the lines, which I recognize as an artistic choice that's completely valid. It just made me twitchy. I don't know why on that deck, it just did. So I ended up trading that one. I do have the newest deck from the Wandering Oracle on its way to me, and that is the Tarot Cyrene. That one doesn't have as much of the coloring outside the lines, and it has a mermaid theme, so I was like, yes please, I want that one. But in the meantime, I had kind of fallen in love with the artwork on this deck. I love the coloring. It's got that kind of old vintagey feel, like that tea-stained look almost. It's really ornate and pretty and colorful. And it does have a little bit of a cartoony feel, but not so much that I feel like I can't take it seriously. Not that that really matters to me anyways, as anybody knows who's watched my channel for half a second. But I just really like this, and it comes in a tin, which is super fun. So these are what the backings look like. And this is what the tin looks like. Did I show it? Yeah, that's what the cover of the tin looks like. I actually bought this off of somebody else last year, and I just haven't really played with it since, so I'm really excited to play with it this year as I'm working with the Marseille. So this is what I'm going to be working with this week. It does have like a little white book, which actually looks like it might not be half bad at all. It's a little chunk. This, in fact, let me show you. It's a little bit of a chunk, and a quick glance shows me that you actually get quite a bit of text for every single card, it looks like. Or at least that's suit information. And then there's one of those paragraphs on each number. So there's some numerology. So I'm going to play with this a little bit this week too and just see what I think. But I'm really excited to dig into this. And I'm going to still be working with this book because I love it so much and I love the methods in this book. But I'm going to try to work with and revisit the Marseille Tarot Revealed by Yoav Bendov. This one has more of a guidebooky kind of feel. I'm not sure if there's directional stuff in here. I really can't remember. I think there is though. So I'm going to be digging back into this book as well, and I'm going to try to make this book my focus this week, but I feel like if I trip up, I may lean back into this one. So these both are going to be in use this week, but I'm going to try to get some reading done on this book if I can, or at least use the individual card interpretations for my daily draws and kind of see what I think of this particular approach. But yeah, I'm excited to dig into that stuff. And since I've rotated out the Kim Cran's Wild Unknown Archetypes deck, I need to rotate in an Oracle deck. And I was talking with a friend about animal decks, and this one came up, and I just realized I missed playing with it. So this is the Animalkin Oracle by Sarah Wilder. This is the mass market edition by Hay House. This was originally a Kickstarter independently produced or Indiegogo independently produced deck. It is beautiful. If I remember, I will also link up in the cards my animal decks video, which I did quite some time ago, that talks about my experiences with different animal decks. This one is my favorite. But what I like is that the simplicity of the artwork combined with the keywords, I think will really complement my Tarot de Marseille readings. So I'm looking forward to working with something that's a little bit less show stealing than the Archetypes deck. So hopefully this will complement and not sort of take over, because I did find that the Archetypes cards were sort of taking over my readings and being the biggest energy present. Maybe this will also be the case, but I love working with this deck. So putting this in rotation I think is going to be really nice for me, and I missed it. I just haven't had it out in a while. So I just said, I want to work with this one. And the reading cloth I'm going to be using is one of my newer ones that Peggy made. Look at this gorgeous fabric. Oh, it's so pretty. It has like Celtic knotwork all through it, and these beautiful like turquoises and blues and greens, and then check out the back. I feel like I might have worked with this one. No, I don't think I have worked with this one yet. But it's almost like this one, this backside almost reminds me, when you go this direction, it almost reminds me of like, maybe it's even supposed to be, but it reminds me of birch trees, but purple with like gold, where all the like little striations would be, or the little, so pretty. So that is my update. That is this week's weekly deck review. I would love to hear in the comments down below what you're working with this week, or what you think of the things that I'm working with or have been working with. If you have any tips, tricks, or resources you want to share about Tarot de Marseille, or if you want to share your experiences about any of these decks, like this one that's kind of newish and I think really unique, Or even if you have a spiritual practice and you want to share with us about that, that would be super fantastic. I always love seeing those comments and having those conversations. Remember that if you would like to book a reading with me, you can do that over at supportivetarot.com. And also, just a heads up, if you haven't seen it yet, Peggy and I are working on planning with some other people here in our community a North American tarot meetup. We are looking at Denver in September of this year. So if you haven't seen the live chat that we hosted earlier this last week, check that out and check out the poll on my community page where we're looking at which weekend we're going to pick. This is going to be an event that's going to run alongside the Denver Gem and Mineral Show, which is one of the largest in the country, and I'm really excited to be able to actually meet some people in person and perhaps see some faces that might not be able to make it out to all the way out to the West Coast. So I'm really looking forward to that. Check it out, give us your feedback, because we're going to be nailing some details on that down really soon. Once we have the dates firmed up, we're probably going to create a Facebook group so we can all chit chat and communicate. But if you don't have Facebook, don't worry, you can just email us. We'll keep you in the loop. It'll all be good. But for now, I'm going to wrap this up. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!